If you're thinking about buying a Chinese variant phone from China to use in the UK, this is probably a good video for you to watch. So when it arrived from China, it came just the phone and there was a adapter here for the charger. Now there's not much in this box. Basically the phone, you get a clear case like this and you get the charger, which is the 18 watt version. It's a smaller version than if you bought a European ROG phone. If you bought a European ROG phone, you would get the 30 watt charger, which is a bit faster. That's not a big deal for me. I charge my phone up every night during the night, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. The thing is about the ROG phone is the battery's so big that you never really need to top it up during the day. I haven't so far. And this is the phone here. Now, there's a few things before you run out and buy a Chinese phone for, you know, a lot less money than you would get a European one. I mean, obviously the price makes it very appealing, but there's a few things that you need to understand about the Chinese versions, and that is usually they're a bit under-specced. Now this having 8 gigs of RAM, this has got 8 gigs of RAM and it's got 128 gig of storage. Now usually it's about 10 or 12 gigs of RAM this has, and at least 512 gig storage. They're usually much bigger. In fact, I think you can go up to a terabyte with this on some versions. So the storage is a lot less, but for me, with the OnePlus 3, I was using 64 gig of storage, and that was absolutely ample for me. Now I've moved up to 128 gig. I'm still only using 64 gig on this, but I'm sure I'll fill it up over time, but it's not a big deal for me. I don't really need more than that. If you're happy with 128 gig, then this is good. But the main difference is the actual receiver, and these is different in that this particular phone cannot receive band 20, which is one of the main bands used by just about every carrier in the UK. Now what you need to decide is, can you live without band 20? If you are like me, living in a city, you're probably not going to notice any difference whatsoever. Most providers use band 20 for rural areas and areas where there's not many people. The thing about band 20 is it's quite low frequency and it travels really far and it can penetrate buildings. But what it doesn't do very well is carry a lot of traffic. So in the cities they tend to use different bands, and this one can pick up every other band that's used in the UK. It's only band 20 that's missing. Now band 20, I've read a few things where people compare it to 3G. It's almost like, you know, band 20 can be like a good 3G. It's sort of similar. It doesn't really pump out the data. It's probably the slowest band on 4G. So when you're getting 4G and it's really slow data and your phone's still showing 4G, there's a good chance that's band 20 you're connected to, and that's why you're not getting the data you would expect from 4G. Before I picked up this phone, I used a site called Cell Mapper, which lets you see what providers use to transmit their data, their 4G data, so you can see what provider does it. Now from my research, I found that probably the worst ones, the ones that use band 20 the most in rural areas out in the country, in Scotland anyway, is Vodafone and O2. They seem to be, they've got many transmitters that are just purely band 20, and so this phone wouldn't be able to pick it up. In a lot of places in rural Scotland you're probably not going to get any. The best one was EE. They are by far the best. If you don't have band 20, that would be your best option. If you're on EE, then you know a Chinese phone is probably going to be a good bet for you. Obviously I can't speak for every area in the country. I'm only basing this on my own experience, and everybody's going to have a different experience depending where you are and where transmitters are compared to where you stay. But so far in Glasgow I have had no problems whatsoever with this phone connecting to data. It's been 4G constantly. I've never actually seen it drop down to 3G. It's always been a 4G and a good 4G signal it's picking up. Now this is where the Chinese variants differ. I'll put a link in the description. There's actually a website that compares both variants, the European version and the Chinese version, and it lets you see the connectivity, the differences. The Wi-Fi is a bit different, it's not quite as good as the European version. It doesn't really affect, I've really not noticed. I'm sure if you were transferring hundreds of data between your phone and a computer you'd probably notice a difference, but for me, just using it as a day-to-day driver, I'm not transferring huge amounts of data between the phone and a computer over my Wi-Fi network, so it makes no difference to me whatsoever. So I'm quite happy with those differences. So it's a few things you need to consider before you actually purchase this from China, and basically the banding's the main thing. You need to make sure that your area is covered properly by more than just band 20. That would be one of the things I check, and if you're a wee bit dubious about it, I wouldn't even bother. I would just save the money, because it's not an unsubstantial sum. It's still nearly £400 for a phone that might not work, so just be careful about that. At the moment I'm actually using 3. It's been absolutely fine, so I've been getting 3 in Glasgow, no problem. I'm actually not on the 3 network anymore. Well, I'm on a 3 network, but not through 3 itself. I'm through a company called Smarty, which actually does a great package at the moment. It's unlimited text and calls and 30 gig of data for £10 a month, and that's been great so far. It's been brilliant. I've nowhere near used that amount of data, so, and that's quite cheap. £10 a month for 30 gig is actually, I think that's the best I've seen. I'll put a link in the description below, and if you choose to click on that link, then I think you get a free month. So basically, out of all the providers, it seems that EE is by far the best one. They hardly use band 20 at all. They've got very few transmitters that are just purely band 20, and that's in the areas of Scotland that I travel in. So that's the most. I think you need to look at where you live and also where you travel to, and make sure that you are going to be covered for decent reception. The problem with EE is it's a much more expensive network. It's really hard to get good deals with them. I noticed that Virgin use the EE network, but I also read an article saying that they're going to be moving to Vodafone soon, so that takes out the picture, because Vodafone and O2 are pretty dire for the Chinese phones. Once you're clear about the banding, you're happy with going on a network, and you're pretty sure that it will cover the area that you live in and the places that you visit a lot, then there's something else you need to know about these phones, and that is it came flashed with the global ROM. So obviously these are flashed with a Chinese ROM. What happens is they'll put in a whole new system for you. It's called the global ROM, and that'll be flashed on your phone. The problem I had when I started putting apps on it, especially Netflix, seems to be the thing that is affected by this. You can't even access it on the Play Store. It doesn't exist for this phone. That's basically what it says. So there's a step you need to take, and that is you have to go in and change the fingerprint in this. Now this is where it gets tricky. You actually have to root the phone. You have to go in, you have to delete everything off it, you change the fingerprint. There's a few things you can do while you're in there which opens up access to themes and things like that, and as part of that you're putting in the global ROM. Then you unroot the phone. After you've done that, you can put any app you like on it from the UK. So I've not had any problems since I've done that. So basically you're going to change the fingerprint on it. It's just basically a tiny wee bit of information that lets the phone know it's Chinese, and what you want to do is change it to a worldwide phone, and that allows it to operate with any apps, and it's been absolutely problem free since I've done that. I will link below to the information that I used. Now it's two things. It was a YouTuber called EGOT Tech, He's actually really good at going through the steps, and I used XDA Forum, which has the same steps in written form, and also the newer ROMs that it's good to flash your phone with. Once you've done all that, you still can't get over-the-air updates from Asus. You need to still put them in manually. There's an easy way to do that. It's not a big deal. If you've rooted phones before, you're not going to have a problem. That is probably one of the main stumbling blocks to getting a Chinese phone, is you need to be comfortable rooting them and changing some of the information right into the operating system, right in the phone. There is a chance you can, if you make a mistake, you can actually brick your phone and make it useless. So that's really the main things you have to bear in mind. So basically this phone has been fantastic. I'm actually really glad that I did buy it from China. It's been working really well, no problems at all. So make sure you know how to root a phone, make sure you're comfortable with that, and make sure you can get reception, otherwise it's useless. And after all that, if you're still happy to go ahead, then get yourself a Chinese phone and enjoy.